Hello, everybody. This is Andrew Sherman of the ML Beers podcast, presenting you all the Lucky 7's tournament, where the World Series champions from the years that ended in the number 7 will face against each other in a full season, and then we'll be playing in a tournament at the end of the season to crown a champion. And we brought this up a couple times on the podcast and wanted to, actually do it, but of course we all got busy. We didn't have the time to do these, but definitely we do now. And so what we're going to do is, like I said, these teams right here, the Boston Red Sox, let's actually get the whole standings up real quick. We have the Milwaukee Braves, the Chicago Cubs, the Florida Marlins, the St. Louis Cardinals, the Minnesota Twins, the Boston Red Sox, the New York Yankees, and the Chicago White Sox. But these teams, folks, are not your today's teams. They are the teams that were part of their championship-winning teams back in their respective years. Of course, Milwaukee being in 1957, the Chicago Cubs being in 1907, the Florida Marlins winning their first championship in 97, the St. Louis Cardinals in 1976, the Minnesota Twins in 87, the 07 Boston Red Sox, the 1927 Yankees, and the 1917 Chicago White Sox. And about these teams, kind of give it a little refresher, but I'm going to start getting with this because the game is starting in January 1st, when really the actual start date should be April 1st. But while that is going, I'll give you a little bit of the rundown of the teams. So here we go. While this is simulating the games, we have the 1907 Chicago Cubs, which they won 107 games and lost 45. Their manager is Frank Chance, which is also their first baseman, so player manager for them. Then for them, they beat Detroit 4-0 to win the World Series in 1907, and they actually are the only team with a tie in this situation. They have Hall of Famers, second baseman Johnny Evers, pitcher Mordecai Brown, first baseman Frank Chance, which is, like I said, already their manager, and shortstop Joe Tinker. And their overall WAR score is a pure 47, and their best player for the year is actually Orville overall with 6. Then we have the 1917 Chicago White Sox with 100 wins and 54 losses. Their manager is Pants Rowland, which I believe, if I remember correctly, in their respective lineups, if I can go to theirs real quick, I believe he's actually second baseman. I believe he was a player. I know that for a fact. I have a feeling. And it doesn't look like he's on here. Anyway, manager Pants Rowland, which is probably one of the more of the funnier names in this. They beat the New York Giants 4-2 in 1917. Their Hall of Famers are second baseman Eddie Collins, catcher Ray Schalk, and pitcher Red Faber. Their overall WAR score is a 50.5, and the man that had the most for the year is actually the man on top in this is Eddie Cicotte, if I'm saying that correctly, with a 11.5. Then up again, let's go to the Chicago Cubs lineup. See, they got some good potential. Their overall is real well. They got some really good players here for the Chicago Cubs of 1907. Do a little it again for the 1917 Chicago White Sox. And now for the 1927 New York Yankees, a.k.a. Murder's Row, which they won 110 games and lost 44. Their manager was Miller Huggins, and they beat the Pittsburgh Pirates in a sweep 4-0. I don't know if I should go through the Hall of Famers. I kind of already feel that you already know them, but we'll just go through them anyway. We have outfielder Babe Ruth, And I know he was a pitcher starting out, and I do have that in my notes. But when he got to the New York Yankees, and especially in 1927, he was mostly outfielder for the Yankees. Then we have first baseman Lou Gehrig. At center field, we have Earl Combs, infielder Tony Lazzeri, pitcher Waite Hoyt, and pitcher Herb Pinnock are your Hall of Famers. And their overall WAR score is a 67.1 with Babe Ruth with a 12.4. And I do have to say, when I was looking at the rosters and looking at the WAR score, by the fourth player, they were already beating, some of the other teams that we'll be talking about in the moment, like the St. Louis Cardinals, the Minnesota Twins of, in 87, and the Florida Marlins of 97. And, of course, Babe Ruth, like I said, having a 12.4. And Lou Gehrig not far behind. I believe he had a pure 12 WAR. Then we go to the Milwaukee Braves of 1957. And they had a 95-59 record. Their manager was Fred Hanley. They beat the New York Yankees 4-3 in the World Series. Their Hall of Famers, of course, is swinging, hammering Hank Aaron. Then as outfielder, for third baseman, Eddie Matthews. Pitcher, Warren Spahn, which he was probably, I believe he was the oldest player on the team, if they want to show me that. There we go. Actually, at 35, it was said on Baseball Reference that he was 36. It was his year 36 for the, when he played for them. And then second baseman Red Schoendienst, which he was most memorable as a Cardinal, but he is going to be talked about a lot during this because also because of the next team that will be coming up. But first of all, their overall score for the Milwaukee Braves was a 49.5, and of course, Hammerin' Hank Aaron had the most with 8. For the 1967 St. Louis Cardinals, which is kind of funny, going back to the Red Schoendienst part, is that Red Schoendienst was the manager of that team. They won 101 and lost 60. For the year, they beat the Boston Red Sox 4-3. Their Hall of Famers on this team is Orlando Cepeda at first base, Lou Brock, Steve Carlton as pitcher, and pitcher Bob Gibson. Their overall WAR score is a 46.4, and of course, Orlando Cepeda had a really good year for them, had the most with 6.8. And you also can't forget, I bring up the Hall of Famers with these clubs, and you really can't forget about the guys that were underneath them, because they really, they had the opportunity to really show. I mean, definitely the St. Louis Cardinals aren't my favorite team, and they couldn't have won without Curt Flood. They couldn't have won the World Series without Tim McCarver, Mike Shannon, and all those guys. And that's where it's going to be coming down to the nitty-gritty of all of this when it gets down to it. And it's going to be very, very interesting. So moving on, we're going to go to the 1987 Minnesota Twins, which is kind of funny because they did beat the St. Louis Cardinals in the World Series 4-3. They had a record of 85-77, which is the lowest win-loss record in this tournament. Their manager was Tom Kelly. Their Hall of Famers were Bert Belevin, center fielder Kirby Puckett, and Steve Carlton, which I do not believe he was a part of this team. But then again, this is a very, very weird game when it comes to all this stuff. And also, they have the spring training rosters, which was just done not too long ago. Anyway, back to it. Their overall WAR score is a 31.3, with Frank Viola having an 8.1. I believe Kirby Puckett that year had a 4.2 even, if I, with that. And actually has the lowest WAR score with all the other teams, and they're kind of the major underdog with this. So anyway, to the next team, the 1997 Florida Marlins. We're somehow falling in love with the Florida Marlins, and I mean it kind of like how they've already been on the show when we were doing the historical showdowns, which we will bring those back. Don't worry about those, folks. Those are really fun. But the 1997 Florida Marlins has something special in our hearts. They're the first team, the first wild card team, I should say, to win a World Series in 1997, and they beat the Cleveland Indians 4-3. They had a 92-70 record, and their manager was Jim Leyland. Hall of Famers, and I know this is going to happen for the last team. They have none at the moment. While doing this, the voting for the 2019 class of the Baseball Hall of Fame voting is going on right now. So anyway, the overall WAR score is a 38.1, and their best player with the WAR score is Kevin Brown at a 6.9. And really looking at this, they only had one great quote-unquote player, with the overall stars being Charles Johnson, but they also had Bobby Bonilla, they had Moises Alou, they had Edgar Renteria when he was very, very young, Gary Sheffield, Cliff Floyd, all those guys, which I kind of see them as the dark horse of it all. And, the underdog Minnesota Twins is going to have a very bad time against these clubs because they are very good. But I think the Florida Marlins might pull something out. But the sleeper I have is the next team, and it's the 2007 Boston Red Sox, the turn of the century Boston Red Sox. And they had a 96-66 record. Their manager, Terry Francona, they beat the Colorado Rockies 4-0 in the World Series, swept them. Any Hall of Famers? No, it's still too early for that. I know some of them are up in the air for Hall of Fame voting. I believe David Ortiz has 3 years to go before he gets in there, but I believe Manny Ramirez and Eric Gagne are on the ballot. Jonathan Papelbon is a guy that still plays, is still in the majors at the moment, but most of the main guys with this team have already gone into retirement. And I should say Dustin Pedroia is, I believe, the only one left from this 07 team still with the Boston Red Sox. Anyway, their overall WAR score is a 60.4, and Josh Beckett has the lead in that with a 6.6. Why do I say these guys are a sleeper? Yes, they have the best WAR. They have the second best WAR score right behind the New York Yankees, Murderers Row, and why do I say that? Well, we're playing in 1957. If you did not see when I was simming through the months and going through it, 1957, and we're also playing with 1957 rules and strategies. And if this was, probably 2017 rules and strategies, it would definitely be the Boston Red Sox winning this. But since it's in 1957, they're kind of at a disadvantage. And I think the teams that, early on from the 1907 Chicago Cubs, 1917 White Sox, and the Murderers Row Yankees of 27, I believe have a better chance of doing well. And, of course, the Milwaukee Brewers of 57, that's kind of a no-brainer. Maybe the St. Louis Cardinals might have the opportunity, but this is when sabermetrics, for the Boston Red Sox, sabermetrics was really on their side. And I think this is where they're going to be the sleeper out of this. Like I said, they had that second highest WAR score, but the strategies of 1957 were very different. Actually, so different, and I can't show you here, but actually the strategies for 1957, I believe they had only nine pitchers, and that's including starting pitching and relief pitching. And they also had 17 position players, and that's including the DH. And yes, the 57 rule is kind of, balking down they shouldn't have a DH, it's 1957, yada, yada, yada. Well, that was kind of the one of the few rules that I have for this tournament. First of all, DH is in for this tournament. Second of all, injuries are off. I don't want to have any type of injuries going on and bad things happen where a team just really gets beat up. I think we need them, let them be immortal because most of them are immortal through the game of baseball, but definitely be immortal, through this. Third of all, there's no trading and no financials, which will be very different, and it also tries to keep the teams the same throughout the season and not afterwards. And then the fourth is that they don't have a minor league. That's why when you saw that the rosters and transactions, if you know Out of the Park Baseball, would have all the minor leagues and all that stuff, which you can do because this is a fictional league, because I had to get all of them through, but usually they would ask for minor leagues, and there was minor leagues in 1957, but this is definitely just going to have one team. They have the reserve roster, which will be filled in a couple of days, because it's almost opening day, which will be really fun for the teams. I believe opening day might be first game is not showing on here, which is very interesting. But anyway, it just shows that I want to keep it as close as possible, just have fun, and not have a group of new guys come in and take over when it really wasn't the team. So anyway, let's look at the preseason predictions. Let's look at the spring training coverage. The 1967 St. Louis Cardinals won 21 games, lost 9. Milwaukee with a 20-10 record. The Chicago Cubs of 1907 had a 18-12. The 1927 Yankees had a 17-13. The Boston Red Sox 13-17. The Florida Marlins of 97 had 13-17. Also, the 87 Twins had a 10-20 record, and the Chicago White Sox of 1917 had an 8-22 record. So I could be wrong on what's, of my predictions so far. And, let's look at the preseason predictions real quick and see what they have. And so it kind of shows how this is possibly going to go down. And I kind of like it. The 67 Cardinals winning 101 games with 61 losses. The Chicago White Sox, Cubs, Red Sox, Braves, the Yankees, Marlins, Twins. And I think the Yankees one is pretty surprising with what they've had. They're going to have the top 10 hitters right here with Gehrig and Ruth, which isn't surprising at all. Then they're going to have Josh Beckett for pitchers for Boston. The Yankees having Pinnock and Pip Gross for them will definitely help them. But I think what's going to be different here might be the home runs. And if you look at the Milwaukee Braves, they have 247 home runs, which possibly will lead the league. Then the Yankees with 209, Minnesota with 207, Boston and all that. Stolen bases might be a different story. I think the Cubs will do well with that. The Chicago Cubs looking to project to have the best DRA. The K's, the Cardinals will have that. The least walks will be the Cardinals also. And the Cardinals will have the most runs, of course. That's why they're projected to have that. But I do believe in my Cardinals. I do believe in them. But I think for the first part of the season, we're going to simulate to the first part of the season probably right before, All-Star break, which will be very interesting. And we're just going to do it month by month. We're going to keep the league home on. And we're just going to go, like I said, month by month. And actually, let's play the first game of the season. Why not? Let's go to opening day. Let's see what's going to happen here. And it looks, like I said, they've already had, everything ready to go. And I see right here, and I've totally forgot about this. Everybody's in the playoffs. So we're just playing for seeding. And I know that's kind of dumb, but I kind of wanted to add another level of randomness to it. So, of course, again, looking at the standings, when we look at this, they're all going to be in. The Z means that they've clinched the playoffs. But I think it's going to be interesting to see how everything is really going to go down. And, I think it will be very, very interesting to see how that all ends up. And I believe I added the All-Star game to it. If I didn't, I feel really bad. No, I didn't. I remember the reason why I didn't. And that's because how could you have an all-star game when there's no two separate leagues nor two different divisions, and it'll just be a cluster. We'll have probably the best of the best near the end of the season. So, of course, let's get on going. So, we're going to simulate to the next month. We're not going to show any game footage, and right at it, the Chicago White Sox have taken the lead, and that was pretty quick. For the first month, the Chicago White Sox 18-9, the St. Louis Cardinals 17-10, the Chicago Cubs 16-12, the Milwaukee Braves 14-13, the Minnesota Twins are 12-15, the Florida Marlins 12-17, the New York Yankees 11-17, and the Boston Red Sox 10-17. So it kind of shows that the WAR scores don't really if I can speak. The preliminary WAR scores do not matter during the game. And you can see right on over here we have the current leaders of batting average, with Buck Weaver hitting a 361, Happy Fleshed with a 358, and Kent Hebrecht of the Minnesota Twins hitting a 346. And also interesting, it's the White Sox, they've done well. I think it's very interesting to not see Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig at those numbers. But of course, they're in the home runs with 12, Hank Aaron at 10, and Lou Gehrig at 10. With RBIs, Hank Aaron has 25, Shoeless Joe Jackson with 25, and Mike Lowell of the Boston Red Sox has 24. Stolen bases, I think is going to be a difference maker between the early ones, as you saw in the predictions. Frank Chance has 7, Eddie Collins has 7, and Lou Brock has 5 on base plus slugging. Happy Flesh is in the lead with a 1.0 .58 on base plus slugging. Batter WAR is Flesh with a pure 2. Who has the highest hitting streak? We have Kurt Flood with 15. The ERAs of Red Faber of the White Sox with a 1.86. And Dave Danforth with a 1.89. Steve Carlton of the St. Louis Cardinals, the 67 Cardinals, with a 2.49, which is definitely a huge gap between these guys. Red Faber, of course, getting the wins. Bob Gibson getting another win at 5. And Dick Hughes with 5 from the St. Louis Cardinals. Kevin Brown of the Florida Marlins has the highest strikeouts with 87. And right with him is Frank Viola with 87. And Jack Plefser, if I'm saying that correctly. Plefster has 84. And also he has the best pitching WAR score at 2.3 at the moment, with Frank Viola with 2 and Kevin Brown at 2. With the saves, we have Jim Scott at 7, Don McMahon at 5, and Joe Hoerner at 3. So anyway, I think this is pretty interesting. Let's go for another month, and then we'll see, what's going to happen with that. And the Chicago White Sox and the St. Louis Cardinals definitely fighting, for 1 and 2. The Cubs kind of stayed in place. The New York Yankees, a month later, it's already in June. The Yankees went from the bottom to the top. The Milwaukee Braves have stayed stagnant. The Boston Red Sox went up. The Florida Marlins have went down, and the Minnesota Twins has stayed. And we can look back at this real quick, how it's all been. See, the Minnesota Twins finally went down, Florida Marlins went 1, and everybody went up. But they've been kind of stagnant, like I said. And if we can get back to the current season right here, Shoeless Joe Jackson definitely taking the cake with .374 batting average. Right behind him, Red Schoendienst of the Milwaukee Braves and David Ortiz. Then we have Babe Ruth with 24 home runs, Orlando Cepeda with 19, and David Ortiz with 17. Definitely different with Hank Aaron not being in the top 3. Then Shoeless Joe Jackson with 54 RBIs. Stolen bases, Frank Chance, Lou Brock, and Johnny Evers. There's been some changes a little bit with that, but Lou Brock, the king of stolen bases before Ricky Henderson took the crown, definitely is on pace. Shoeless Joe Jackson, of course, has the best on base plus slugging at 1.062. Batter WAR, Babe Ruth, Happy Flesh, and David Ortiz. Babe Ruth, though, just inching out with a 2.7. The hitting streak right now is at 34, Orlando Cepeda. So we might see him going after Joe DiMaggio's record of 56. Red Faber still holds the lead in ERA with a 1.68. Dave Danforth again at number 2. Number 3 is changed with Josh Beckett at 2.49. With the wins, Red Faber, Ed Cicate, both from the White Sox, have 10 and 9 respectively, lead 1 and 2, and Bob Gibson still part of the top 3 with 9 wins. Kevin Brown and Frank Viola still have the same numbers but changed lanes here with a 162 strikeouts, and Bob Gibson finally getting up there with 161. Jack Feister has a 4.3 pitcher's WAR score. Kevin Brown right behind him with a 4.2, and Josh Beckett with a 3.6. Jim Scott has the most saves with 9. Don McMahon has 8, and Joe Hoerner has 7. And McMahon has stayed right there. And before we go on to, simming the next month, let's look at the overall statistics, creating pictures for everybody. And Shoeless Joe Jackson has a .466 on base percentage which any sabermetrician would love to see on any of their teams. Then Gary Sheffield with a 412 and David Ortiz with a 408. Then we have slugging-wise, Orlando Cepeda, even though that looks nowhere close to looking like him, has a 636 slugging. David Ortiz right behind him, and Babe Ruth right there. Then for a weighted WOBA, which is always fun, David Ortiz with a 428, Shoeless Joe Jackson right behind him, and Orlando Cepeda with him. Wins above replacement, we've already talked about that with a 2.7. WAR with Babe Ruth. Hits, Lou Brock is right behind the man that used to be on the St. Louis Cardinals, Red Shane Deans, with 79 hits, and Shoeless Joe Jackson filling out that spot. With doubles, we have, I believe it is Bob Musial. Yeah, Bob Musial from the New York Yankees with 21 doubles, and Lou Brock, the speedy Lou Brock, has 5 triples. Right behind him is Bill Brunton, Bill Brunton of the Milwaukee Braves, and Shoeless Joe Jackson with 4 from the Chicago White Sox of 1917. And I mean, these guys, 46 runs for Gehrig, Babe Ruth with 44. I was expecting a lot from this, from the Yankees, but nothing's going on, which I'm a little bit disappointed. But what can I do, right? And let's see one thing real quick before I go on. Instead of doing another month, let's just get to the end of the month here. Let's just go to June 20th, and let's just autoplay that and see what happens. I know things are going to switch in and out. The Chicago White Sox and the Cardinals are jockeying for position in the standings. The Chicago Cubs, of course, stay in their position, stay in their lanes. The Milwaukee Braves go up. The Florida Marlins go up. The Yankees go down. The Boston Red Sox go down. And then it's officially confirmed that the Minnesota Twins will possibly be the team that will just be in the cellar the whole time, which I thought they would, at least do better. But then again, it is the 87 Twins. So anyway, it is good old June 30th. You know what? We need to actually at least play one game. Or it couldn't be an OOTP. And of course, I was not expecting this, but definitely the better one out of the 4. And what's oddly enough, if I'm correct, that each team playing is correlated to their to the standings. Yes, they are. Well, anyway, we'll watch number 1 and number 2, the St. Louis Cardinals, on the road against the 1917 Chicago White Sox here. And while they have that rolling up, let's go through the starters real quick and the starting pitcher for tonight's game. For the 1967 St. Louis Cardinals, we have Bobby Tolan at DH, batting left. He's currently right now has a .236 batting average, 10 home runs, 29 RBIs, and an OPS of .697. And his away numbers are .223, .281, and .331. In the second spot, we have Curt Flood, center fielder, and he bats right, a .332 batting average, 8 home runs, 41 RBIs, 831 OPS, and he has really good away numbers, .335, .379, and .430. In the third spot, we have Lou Brock, left fielder, the speedster. Hitting left, has a .335 batting average with 16 home runs, 46 RBIs, a 933 OPS, and he has, again, good numbers away with a 311, 318, and 500. And these two guys have done well against Faber of the Chicago White Sox, which he is the starting pitcher for, and Dick Hughes, the starting pitchers for the St. Louis Cardinals. Going down the list real quick, Orlando Cepeda will be 4th, Tim McCarver 5th, the catcher Tim McCarver will be 5th, second baseman Julian Javier will be 6th, Roger Maris will be in right field in the 7th spot, Phil Gagliano will be the third baseman in the 8th spot, and to round out the 9, we have Dal Maxville being the shortstop for the St. Louis Cardinals. For your top 4, we have Ed Collins Sr., second baseman for the White Sox. He he hits the left with a .252 batting average, no home runs, 22 RBIs, and an OPS of 658, which that is not good, which hasn't looked good for any of them. Then we have in the second spot Chick Gandil, first baseman, hits right. He has a .294 batting average, no home runs, 25 RBIs, and 645 on base plus slugging. In the third hole, we have Happy Flesh with center fielder hitting right with a .320 batting average, 25 home runs, and 70 RBIs with a .966 on base plus slugging. And it looks like he does well at home with a .345, .385, and .655 slash line. In the fourth, we have Shoeless Joe Jackson, right fielder, hitting left with a .333 batting average, 12 home runs, 70 RBIs, a .960 on base plus slugging, and again he does well at home with a .385, .458, and .615 slash line. In the sixth spot, we have third baseman Buck Weaver, which he's a switch hitter with a .304 batting average, 8 home runs, 41 RBIs, and 789 OPS. And again, he does well at home with 302, 349, and a .426 slash line. Then just to round out the last bit, we have Ray Schalk, catcher for the Chicago White Sox, in the sixth spot with a .258 batting average. Then we have Nemo Leibold at left field in the seventh spot, hitting .206, 20 RBIs. And I forgot to say Ray Schalk has 8 home runs and 34 RBIs. In the eighth spot, we have Swede Reisberg, shortstop, and hits right with a 167 batting average, 1 home run, and 21 RBIs. And to round out the 9, we have Fred McMullen, the DH, hits right with a .221 batting average, no home runs, and 14 RBIs. And I think it's going to be an interesting one. Like I said, we have Red Faber for them, which he is the best pitcher in all of baseball, if I remember correctly. He has a .227 ERA, a 1.09 whip, a 10.1 K per 9, and a 1.9 walks per 9. And then for the St. Louis Cardinals, Dick Hughes, right-hander, 377 ERA, 110 whip, 12.6 Ks per 9, and a walk per 9 of just straight 2. So here we go, folks. Let's just play ball and see where this goes. Alrighty, here we go. And the first batter is walked. Bobby Tolan walks to first. Kurt Flood up, hits a high one towards left, and was caught by the left fielder. Try to cut the man off, but it didn't happen. Lou Brock is up at bat. Hits a nice one to left, just for a single. Nothing wrong with that. 2 men on, 1 man out for the St. Louis Cardinals. Orlando Cepeda hits one right up the center, gets that nice RBI from Tolan, and it's an early lead for the St. Louis Cardinals. 1-0. Tim McCarver strikes out, makes it still 1-0 with 2 outs. And that was an out. I can't believe it. Orlando Cepeda was thrown out at second, and that ends the inning here for the St. Louis Cardinals. For the White Sox, hit towards the first baseman. Oh, and there was a little drop right there. Couldn't get it. Collins makes it safe, but Dick Hughes with the error right there. Here's the pitch, and a nice single out to left. Got 2 men on, no out. It should be 1 out, but it couldn't be done. But there's the out right there. Happy Flesh goes down swinging. Shoeless Joe Jackson hits one high, and dead center was caught. Strikeout number 2, I believe, for Dick Hughes for the evening. Good inning for the St. Louis Cardinals as they get out of a jam there, keeping it 1-0. Julian Javier strikes out. Roger Maris walks. Phil Gagliano hits it towards center with a dive and a great catch by Flesh. A little roller towards first. Can only get... Oh, another pitcher error on the defense. This might be the deal breaker here. It's still 2 outs and a nice little bloop towards shallow center, and the second baseman, Collins Sr., gets the catch. A lot of defensive miscues here so far in this game. There's a strikeout, number 3 for Dick Hughes for the St. Louis Cardinals. And a nice little roller to second baseman. 2 gone early here in the bottom of the second. And another strike, making it 4 for Dick Hughes. And it's showing a dominant performance for the number 1 and 2 of the teams here in Chicago. Here's the pitch. Kurt Flood, little roller towards the second baseman. Collins makes it easy, gets the out, number 1. Another roller gets through both the defenders, and Lou Brock is on. Cepeda with a high one. It looks good, and it's going to be fair. It's going to be short, a double right there, and the Cardinals score again, making it 2-0 now with 1 out, with Orlando Cepeda getting the RBI. Tim McCarver striking out the first time, gets a nice single up the middle, and gets Orlando Cepeda home, giving him the RBI, making it 3-0 now for the Cardinals. And Julian Javier strikes out again, making it 2 outs, and the pop-up to left field ends the inning. And a nice hit from Fred McMullins from the Chicago White Sox. Trying to start something here. And possibly the rally might happen. McMullins hits Collins Sr., gets the walk. And there's no play with the dive. There's the bobble, and the bases are loaded here. Dick Hughes in the jam gets his first out with a strikeout. That will be number 5 for him for the night. Jackson hits one nice shallow right field, and he will score 2, making the game 3-2. Jackson coming up big for the Chicago White Sox. And then Buck Weaver strikes out, making it number 6 for Dick Hughes. Ray Schalk make that number 7 for Dick Hughes as they go down after Shoeless Joe Jackson's 2-run RBI. It's 3-2 St. Louis in the top of the 4th. Phil Gagliano rolls one to the second baseman, and they get the out right there. Dal Maxville, another oddly similar play, grounder to Collins, gets the out. And then Bobby Tolan with the power. Does he have the opportunity? He's going to go to third, and he does. Perfect right in the gap. Tolan gets it to the wall, and Tolan has the triple of the night. But can Kurt Flood make the score in this opportunity? Hits it straight to the second baseman. All outs towards Collins Sr. Makes it still 3-2. St. Louis going to the bottom of the 4th.
Strike 3.
Dick Hughes being lights out tonight. That will be his 8th strikeout here, the bottom of the 4th. But let's up a walk to Swede Reisberg, which he hasn't done well this season with a 167 batting average. He tries to pick off Reisberg, but nothing doing. Dick Hughes needs to focus on his pitcher, on the batter. And here we go. There's the 1, the 2, and the 3. The 1-2 double play. Make that +1 equals a inning-ending double play here in Chicago. Lou Brock with the hit, splits the defenders, and gets a nice single towards right. Oh! Cepeda doesn't swing, but Lou Brock steals, and he's safe. He lets Orlando Cepeda walk. Tim McCarver up. Gets a nice one towards the first baseman. Double play situation, but it does move the runner from second to third. And a nice hit from Javier, but it doesn't do much as it's straight towards the left fielder, Liebold. And we're going to the bottom of the 5th now. Nice hit in the air. Nope, it will drop right in front of Roger Maris right there. Chick Gandil. Was he safe? Was he out? And it was an out on Chick Gandil. A nice hit. High towering. Will it be a home run? Yes, it is. Goodbye. The Chicago White Sox take the lead from Happy Flesh home run. 2-run shot. And Collins comes in too, giving him the high fives. Now Dick Hughes is having some problems here, as he used to strike him out, and now he's having problems just to even get him to get out. There's the second out with a fly ball to shallow center. Buck Weaver with that. And then Schalk hits it to third and gets an easy grounder to end the inning, but the damage has already been done. The White Sox take the lead 4-3 here in the bottom of the 5th, going into the 6th now. Roger Maris just gets it over the second baseman into shallow center and gets a single. Strikeout number 4 for Red Faber there with Gagliano going down. And a potential, yes it is, a 1-2 double play, but they already had one to make it 3 to end the inning. Liebold gets it through the shortstop, Dal Maxville. A confident bunt, and he's out. Liebold moving to second, and a strikeout. Dick Hughes might have found his confidence back, getting him 9 strikeouts of the night. Letting Collins go through. He looks like he's going to let him intentionally walk and see what happens here. But Chick Gandil, nothing doing, strikes out. He gets his Dick Hughes gets his 10th strikeout of the game. And here we go, top of the 7th here, the later innings, and Bobby Tolan gets the nice single to left. Kurt Flood, there's a bobble at first, but Kurt Flood's too fast, and there's 2 men on. Can Lou Brock bring him in? Hits it down the line, pass through the first baseman, gets 1, and he's safe at second. The game is tied here in Chicago. Lou Brock bringing in Tolan. And now Red Faber letting Orlando Cepeda walk to load the bases with no outs. And a nice hit towards right field. Gets a single for McCarver, but he scores 2 there, scoring in Flood and Lou Brock to make it 6-4. Faber striking out Javier, which he has not been doing well tonight, getting his 5th strikeout. Maris doing the same, striking out, giving Faber his 6th. Oh, and Gagliano gets it through the second baseman and scores another one there. Cepeda scores all the way from second, making it 7-4. Dal Maxville with a high one to right, and it's an easy play to end the inning. But again, it has already done damage, making it 7-4. Happy Flesh gets a single to left, and he hit that home run a couple 2 innings ago, which was really good. And a diving play from Kurt Flood gets the out there, ending Shoeless Joe Jackson's turn in this inning. Tries to pick off Flesh, and nothing doing. And there is a hit from Buck Weaver towards center, but Kurt Flood reels it in. Here's the pitch and the hit. Javier with the dive. Maxville with the dive and getting it done, even though he hasn't done much this game. His defensive prowess has happened, and it ends the inning. Here's a hit. High, far, gone. Dolan with a home run. You can put it on the board. Yes. Actually, that was kind of funny since it was for the St. Louis Cardinals and not the Chicago White Sox. But Dolan's home run makes it 8-4, but Kurt Flood strikes out to Fred Faber with 7 of the night. Here's a hit from Lou Brock to left center. Single right there, Lou Brock on. Cepeda with a grounder to third, and nothing doing there, but moves the runner, making it 2 outs. Tim McCarver with the nice hit in last inning, but a wild pitch moves over Brock to third, and a walk gets him on first. Javier, can he get through? Yes, he does. Gets the RBI, finally gets a hit for the night. Roger Maris, can he get through? And it does. Tim McCarver running towards home. Will it be in time? Oh! Yes, it will be. What a throw from Flesh from deep, from mid-center to get him out, to end the pain and the sorrow, which leads it 9-4 St. Louis here in Chicago. Strike out for Leibold makes it 11 for Dick Hughes for the night. Swede Riceberg gets on with a walk. Fred McMullen with a short one to right, but it's an easy play for Roger Maris. Collins getting into the gap. We might see a triple here. Collins with legs. Will it be a play at third? Oh, and he's out! Oh! The run goes in, though, if I'm correct. Yes, the run goes in. And it's 9-5 Chicago White Sox here in Chicago. Strike one. Melly Wolfgang will now be in for Fayberg. Strike one. Maxville gets a single off of that. Bobby Tolan hits a nice high one to center, but it's not going far like his home run in the last inning. And the hit towards the second baseman. Great reflex from Melly Wolfgang. And it's to the final 3 outs for the Chicago White Sox as the St. Louis Cardinals lead 9-5. Chick Gandil towards the shortstop. Maxville makes an easy grounder and gets the first out. And the same thing happens to Happy Felsch. Shoeless Joe Jackson with the opportunity here. Here we go. Jackson couldn't get through it even though you could hear it. The bat just hit the ball so perfectly. Javier gets the ball and ends the game with a grounder. So that will be doing it here, folks, with this game. And actually, the simulation with the first half of the season of the Lucky 7's tournament. Before we go, let's go through the the box score real quick. The St. Louis Cardinals defeated the Chicago White Sox 9-5. The Cardinals had 17 hits to the White Sox 10, but the White Sox had the costly 2 errors, while the Cardinals had 1, which probably made the difference here. But going down through the innings, Cardinals took an early lead in the first inning. Then they added 2 more in the third, but the White Sox creeped up in the bottom to make it 3-2. In the fifth, they took the lead off of a home run by Flesch and making it 4-3. And then in the top of the 7th, it all went downhill for Fayberg as the Cardinals scored 4 in the top of the 7th, and then they scored 8. Then they scored 2 in the top of the 8th, and then the Chicago White Sox tried to get 1 more in the bottom of the 8th to make it 9-5, but nothing else in the 9th to make it official. So looking at the line scores real quick, I have to say, the player of the game goes to Lou Brock, even though it does say it down there. But if you really look at it, 5 hits, 3 runs, 1 RBI. He wasn't left on base at all, which is, he went a perfect 5 for 5 for the night. Can't beat anybody with that. He stole a base, which is great, but you can't do anything about that. But then when you look at the fielding errors, real quick for the St. Louis Cardinals, Dick Hughes had that error at first, couldn't, bobble the ball and just let it go, but it wasn't the difference maker. But let's look at the Chicago White Sox real quick. Eddie Collins he went 3 for 2 of the night. He had a walk, 2 walks to be exact. Chick Grandel went 2 for 4. Why do I want to say Bobby Flesch? Happy Flesch went 5 for 2 with no walks. Shoeless Joe Jackson, he was there but not seen a lot. We had Jackson going 2 for 5 with no walks. And everybody else in the back end of the lineup, Weaver, 0 for 4. Schalk, 0 for 4. Liebel, 1 for 4. Riceberg going 1 for 4, even though he had, 2 walks, still nothing. And McMullen going 1 for 4. As for the Cardinals, just going down the line. 3 for 5 for Tolan and that big home run. Kurt Flood, 0 for 6. I believe he was on once. Yeah, he got the run, but no walk. Oh yeah, it was one of the fielding errors from Faber. Then we have Lou Brock, like I said, going 5 for 5, 3 runs, 1 RBI. Then Orlando Cepeda going 2 for 3 with 2 walks, 2 RBIs. Tim McCarver 2 for 4 with 1 walk, 1 strikeout, and 3 RBIs. Julian Javier going 1 for 5 but struck out 3 times. Roger Maris 2 for 4 with 1 walk and a strikeout. Phil Gagliano going 1 for 5 with 1 RBI and 2 strikeouts, and Dal Maxville going 1 for 5. On the pitching side, Dan Hughes. Dick Hughes went 7 1/3 innings, gave up 9 hits, 5 runs, 5 earned runs, 4 walks, and 11 strikeouts, and giving up the 1 home run, pitching 139. Then we had Holner cleaning up for him, went 1 2/3 innings, giving up 1 hit, and that was it, only threw 12 pitches. Then on the Chicago side, we had Faber going 7 2/3 innings, giving up 15 hits, 9 runs, 7 of them earned, 5 walks, 7 Ks, 1 home run. He threw 146 pitches. And Millie Wolfgang going 1 1/3 innings with 2 hits and 1 walk, pitching 21 times. But again, like I said, folks, that will do it here for the game. As seen here, we have the other box scores to end June 30th. We had the Boston Red Sox barely beating the Minnesota Twins 8-7. Then we had the Florida Marlins getting the lone score in their game over the 1927 Murderers Row with a score of 1-0, scoring in the bottom of the first. And then the Chicago Cubs of 1907 take a commanding win over the Milwaukee Braves 5-2 here. So that will do it here, folks. This is the part 1 of possibly 4 parts, 5 parts. I have not decided yet. But anyways, folks, that will do it here for the Lucky 7 tournament from the ML Beers podcast. And this is your host, Andrew Sherman. And of course, our mod, our creed, our saying for this lovely tournament: win or lose, there is always booze.